Welcome to the Maura Sweeney Podcast. Maura is an international speaker, Huffington Post contributor, and the trademarked ambassador of happiness. In 10 minutes or less, Maura weaves clever anecdotes, insightful questions, and personal stories to challenge your mindsets and enable you to live happier from the inside out. Here's Maura with today's podcast for you.
Are you making happy hour happen? Well, if you're on a path to living happy from the inside out, today's podcast will inspire you not just to listen, but to actually take some action. Are you making happy hour happen? Happy hour. Now, you may be thinking of it in its very narrow and maybe today's commonplace sense. Today's happy hours are written about everywhere. You can go out and find that nearly every restaurant, every bar, and every common establishment is advertising happy hour. Really, happy hour is oftentimes for people coming in after work and having a drink. But I want to inspire you today with the true essence, as I believe that happy hour draws up for all of us and helps us all to appreciate life, appreciate one another, literally from the inside out. Let me give you my earliest recollections of happy hour. I was a very young child, and I could remember going over to my great-grandma Corella's house. She had died when I was very young, but her home was still present, and her daughter, Millie, and her husband, Dell, continued living in that home. It was a larger home, and because it had already been established by Grandma Corella as a place where the family would always get together, that tradition would continue. So count me in at sort of the end part of that era. I remember going over to that house on a Sunday afternoon, and everyone from the extended family was coming in. That meant that there would be people much, much older than me, but it would also be their children, and then their children's children, which meant that I had cousins that were my age and maybe a little older. We were all there. The adults would get dressed up. There was a lot of chatter. Everyone was excited. There was this celebratory feeling. There was an electricity. And also, because it was a happy hour and everybody was invited, it differed from a specific holiday where maybe one person was being honored because of a birthday or one couple being honored because of an anniversary. In this case, people were getting dressed up and all excited to come because everyone was joining together. It was that very act of coming together. The more the merrier, the feeling of celebration and the feeling of inclusion rather than the feeling of isolation or just one person being honored. Each new person was bringing their own little spice, their own personality, sometimes their own big mouth, their own storytelling. It really didn't matter, their own silliness. They were all bringing something to happy hour. And I can tell you as a little child, although I was not imbibing, I have memories that never went away. I could remember going into the kitchen and seeing my Aunt Millie, who was busy opening bottles and preparing things and chatting with everyone. I could remember everyone sharing about things that had gone on the previous week. I remember going into the living room and seeing my Uncle Dell, who absolutely loved children. And not only would he tickle us until we could barely breathe, which of course we loved, but he was always giving us pony rides. And so he was just a fun man that made happy hour fun for kids like us. It might have been called happy hour, but it was literally an environment created in someone's home where everyone's presence added to the overall electricity and festivity. Now, what does that mean for you? Some of you may be saying, well, I don't come from that kind of a family. We're teetotalers. Or maybe I don't even have a family. I want to let you know about some of the elements that go into what I would consider a true happy hour, because you too can make your own happy hour. I'll give you some examples from my life growing up. I could remember one of the best things that made me so happy, that really followed suit with the same elements of what I'd say a happy hour was When I was young, we had a pool in our backyard. We were probably one of the first families that ever had a built-in pool. It was 16 feet wide by 32 feet long. And so obviously it was something that a lot of the kids in the neighborhood thought was really neat. Well, it was one thing to go swimming by ourselves, but nothing made me happier than being able to have other kids come over to the pool. And when they did, for me, it was the more the merrier, and here's why. My idea of making a happy hour happen was coming up with relay races in the pool. And I want you to think about this. If you're going to have two teams and you're going to have relay races, you need multiple kids on opposite sides of the pool who are there to play off one another, to compete with one another. We would come up with all kinds of different swimming moves that you'd have to abide by in order to qualify. We would have things that you have to ring, or batons you'd have to hold on to. The crazier it was, the better it was. Now, I know when I look back on it that was an hour, a moment in time. It was outdoors, not in. It was kids, not adults. It was no drinking. It was just being in the water. It was my idea of a happy hour. A little bit beyond that, I could remember when I was a sophomore in high school, I had asked my parents if I could have a party, and I called it a greaser party. And although it was very limited in terms of the number of people that could come, my girlfriend Elaine and I had spent weeks preparing for this. It was nobody's birthday. It was no holiday. It was a theme party, and everyone was very excited about it. And that would be an example of a happy hour for high schoolers. Beyond that, I remember when I was a junior and I was part of student council, I remember always thinking that we had no more dances, because in the 70s, dances had kind of gone passé, other than, let's say, junior prom. But I remember having this idea of creating a Christmas cotillion. It was my answer to everybody could get invited to the party rather than just the few that could come into my home when I was growing up. And I could remember coming up with the theme. I remember putting together all the people that were planning on coming to this event that was held right at the high school gym. And each new name that went up on the wall made me so happy. It gave people a chance to dress up. It was a special night. It gave everybody a chance to talk about it. More and more people were coming to this, and with each new person that came, I became happier still. It was the idea of creating or making a happy hour within the context and the confines of my life. Now, I could fast forward and tell you that my husband and I moved to Florida in the early 80s. We had only one child. We had no other family that moved down here, so we did not have a traditional existence. But we found our own way, whether it was at our home or doing other things, to create our idea of a happy hour. And it would always be with a multitude of people. It would be celebratory for all. It would have different elements where people were appreciated and where people's fun stories or gifts or joke telling or music or cooking or whatever it might have been all played a part in creating the happiness in the made-up happy hour. So think about what this means for you. Are you one of those people who says, oh, I look back on my past, it was so nice, I wish we had it today, and yet you do nothing? Can you be one of those personalities who thinks that somebody else out there needs to create your happy hour, and you forget the fact that you are someone who can make a happy hour happen? If you fall into those categories, or even if you don't, I want you to realize today, happiness is a choice. And happiness, when added to and multiplied by the hearts, the inspiration, and the spirits and personalities of other people who join in, can make happiness overflow. And you find yourself not just individually happy, but you find yourself experiencing something that goes way beyond an individual, isolated moment in time. I am going to do something I've never done before in these podcasts. I'm going to personally challenge you to come up with your own version of making happy hour happen. And here's what I'd like for you to do. I want you to be creative, think outside the box. Maybe on the other hand, you will want to do something that's more traditional, but don't let anything at all keep you in a mindset that says, I can't, or because I don't have the following ingredients, I can't do a happy hour. I want you to create one yourself. And once you do, I want you to write me or videotape it and send it to me. Take a photo and send it to me. Write to me at Maura, M as in Mary, AURA, at my website, which is Maura, 4U.com. Maura at MauraForYou.com. Make the header, Making Happy Hour Happen. I would love to hear from you, and I want to thank you in advance for making happy hour happen, not just for you, but for the greater world around you too. Don't go away, because there is just one more person we need to listen to who's going to share with us what makes them happy from the inside out too. This has been Maura with Maura for You.
Hi, I'm Brigitte Plugge and I'm living in The Hague. And what makes me happy is when I see my friends and when I see the sunshine, because the sunshine is very important to me. And I am a very spiritual person, and I can find things in that. And walk with my dog, it makes me happy. And it makes me happy when the people are kind to each other. That's very important. And what makes me happy is when I drive a car also.
For more insights on living happy from the inside out, subscribe to this podcast. To learn more about Maura, visit her MauraForYou.com website, where you'll find videos, blogs, books, and the Foundations of Happiness self-study e-course. Maura, 4U.com, where Maura is always for you.